Hello, welcome to Get the Offer, Mastering the Art of Interviewing. During this presentation, you will learn how to successfully prepare for an interview, how to develop interview answers that will demonstrate your skills and strengths and therefore outline your value to your potential employer. And you will also learn how to conduct a successful close at the end of an interview, as well as how to follow up with your potential employer after the interview is over. Let's get started. The employer and the candidate have different goals during the interview. The employer's goal during the interview is to confirm that the statements the candidate made on their resume are accurate. The employer is also looking to learn more about the candidate and their goals and motivations for applying for that specific job at that specific company. And the employer is doing a check for intangibles, such as seeing if the candidate would be a good fit for their team and the management style that exists at that company. We like to refer to these intangibles as a chemistry check. The candidate, on the other hand, is in the interview to learn more about that specific employer and the job that they applied for. So they're there to learn more information than can be learned from simply reading the job description. The candidate is also there to sell themselves so that they stand out from others who've applied for the same role. And lastly, the candidate is also there to conduct a chemistry check as well to make sure that they feel the company would be a good fit for them, that they would feel comfortable in that role, and just to make sure that, again, the chemistry check is approved and they just feel like it's the right environment for them to spend a large portion of their day-to-day life in. A first impression will be made in 7 seconds. So let's learn a little bit more about different parts of the interview so you can make a good first impression. There are 3 parts to delivering a successful interview. Number 1 includes preparation so that you can make a solid first impression. The second part includes connecting the dots for your future employer, which involves asking and answering questions. And the third part involves closing the interview with a powerful wrap-up and then following up after the interview with a thank you communication afterward. Let's get started with preparation. By failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. Ben Franklin. In the next few slides, we're going to go through a few different ways that you can prepare for an interview. We would recommend doing each of these steps in order to successfully set yourself up to conduct a very well-informed and strong interview. A few ways to prepare that we would recommend is researching the organization, industry, and the interviewers that will be conducting your interview, to practice and anticipate responses to tough questions, identify your personal strengths, achievements, and experiences that you want to highlight and speak about in your interview. You want to make sure that you nail down logistics so you know exactly what is going to happen on the day of your interview. You want to make sure that you also prepare to dress professionally on the day of, and do a quick check of your digital footprint. Here are a few resources we would like to recommend to help you get started with your research. When researching a company or an organization, make sure that you look at their website or websites and social media pages. So social media pages could include Instagram, Twitter, TikTok maybe, but also LinkedIn. Remember to check an organization's LinkedIn. You can learn about specifics regarding this organization, and you can see what's trending within the organization based on the type of information that they are pushing out to the public via posts and shares and retweets. Another website that will be helpful to use when conducting research is industry-specific websites or business news sites. So you could, if you were looking for a job in marketing, you might want to look up the American Marketing Association's website just to see what's trending in that industry. So you might be able to align some of your past experiences with some things that are trending, and you'll be able to present this information during the interview. Looking at employer reviews on websites such as Glassdoor can also help you. Sites like Glassdoor not only have opinion-based information about what it's like to work with that company, they also might present information about types of interview questions that were asked in the past for the position that you are applying to. Take websites that are review-based with a grain of salt, just because they are opinion-based, and you always just have to think critically about someone else's opinion. You can use LinkedIn to research the bios of your interviewers and to also get an idea about the culture that is present at that company and general information about that company, again, based on the types of posts that the company is putting out there, as well as individual employees that work for that organization. The last place that we would recommend to do research is within your network. Your personal network, if you're connected to the company in any way, but also your Widener network. So if you're interested in working for Boeing, for example, see what faculty members or advisors on campus have connections with Boeing that could help you learn a little bit more about the interview process or the ins and outs of that company. You could also do a quick search on LinkedIn to see if any Widener alumni currently work at that company, and you could reach out to them in the research phase of your interview to just get an idea of why they like the company, how their interview process went, and maybe gain some perspective about what areas of your background might be helpful to highlight in the interview so that you can put your best foot forward. Here are a few quick resource links to get you started. If you would like to subscribe to online publications that are industry specific, you can go to My Widener, and you can go to the Wolfgang Libraries page to locate this information. Additionally, you can go to the Career Design and Development My Widener as well to gain information about industry specific resources and more interviewing tips. Lastly, if you would like to locate Widener alumni that I was speaking about on the slide before, you can feel free to go to LinkedIn, search Widener University, and on the left-hand side, click on Alumni. This will give you access to over 30,000 alumni, and you can search them based on current job title, past major, or company. In addition to researching the employer that you would like to work for, it's also important to self-reflect and do a little bit of research about yourself. You want to think back in your past, specifically about your professional experiences, to identify skills, strengths, and achievements that you want to talk about during your interview. This will help add value to your interview and explain your value to your future employer. When you've identified these skills, strengths, and achievements, you want to write them down, and you want to start thinking about examples of times when you demonstrated these items. This will help you organize the examples that you would like to present during your interview, and it'll give you a little bit of an arsenal to use when you're asked questions during the interview. If you're not sure what your strengths are, try talking to friends, previous coworkers, or current coworkers, or your professors. Additionally, in the next slide, we're going to look at some NACE core competencies that have been identified by the National Association of Colleges and Employers as skill areas or strength areas that employers are looking for in candidates. Once you've decided what you want to talk about in relation to your experience, try to anticipate questions that you might be asked during the interview and think about which examples you would like to use to answer those questions. So, for example, an employer might ask you, what is your greatest strength? You might want to look at your list of strengths, think about which one is your favorite, and make sure that you have an example of a time when you demonstrated that strength prepared so that when the employer asks you that question, you'll be ready to go. Here's a list of core competencies that have been researched and identified by the National Association of Colleges and Employers. They looked at what employers find most valuable in candidates and they came up with this list. So items on this list include critical thinking, problem solving, teamwork, collaboration, professionalism, work ethic, oral and written communication, digital technology, leadership, career management, and global multicultural fluency. So just like we talked about on the slide before this one, when you're self-reflecting, try and think, what was an example of a time when I demonstrated teamwork in either my class or in my extracurricular activities or in a professional setting? What was the time when I best exemplified my ability to think critically through a problem? Come up with examples of times when you have demonstrated these skills in each of your professional experiences or in the classroom or in your extracurricular activities, and have those stories ready to go in preparation for the interview. One of the best things to do when preparing for an interview is to practice. To access Big Interview, you can go to My Widener and search Big Interview. To log in, you need to use your Widener email address and whatever password you decide to create. Once you're in, Big Interview can let you view sample questions, practice answering these questions by recording your answer and either listening to it yourself or sharing it with someone else to gather feedback. It also helps you by providing tips to consider when delivering your answers, and you can even learn how to build your answer using the Answer Builder, which gets into the STAR interview strategy, which we'll talk about later in this presentation, to help you strategically build and even log and document your answers. This might seem like a tiny detail, but it's helpful to do a quick logistics check when you're preparing for an interview. You want to make sure that you arrive a little bit early in order to make a good first impression with the interviewer. In order to arrive early, you want to make sure that you have all of the specifics about transportation and other logistics nailed down, such as, is there a cost associated with parking? Is there parking? Are you going to take the train? What does traffic look like at a certain time of day when you'll be traveling for your interview? It's really important to know specifically where you're going, the name of the building, the floor, maybe the room number, so that if you get lost, you know exactly what to ask for when you ask for assistance. Also make sure that you have written down the name of the person who you know that you will be meeting when you arrive at the interview. This again just helps if you get lost, you'll know exactly who to ask for if you need to ask for assistance. Writing down their contact information is helpful as well in case you need to contact them for any reason. I always like to share the story about an interview candidate we had for a career counseling position here at Widener, who the day before the interview traveled to the interview at the same time she knew she would be traveling that day just to see what the traffic on I-95 was like. So she knew if she had to give herself, 45 or 55 minutes to leave her home and account for traffic on her way to the interview. So I always thought that that was really smart of her and helped her prepare in an extra special kind of way. It's important to think about what you're going to wear on the day of your interview. You want to make sure that you have your outfit prepared beforehand. So again, you're not rushing in the morning and trying to make last minute decisions about an outfit. You have enough to worry about that morning, so just make sure that you're prepared with your outfit beforehand. When selecting an appropriate interview outfit, you always want to err on the side of formal or conservative. Even if it's a more laid back kind of company, you have to remember that you're interviewing, so you're not yet part of the company yet. So out of respect for the organization, you want to make sure that you dress formal in business attire and on the conservative side. If you're ever uncertain about what to wear for an interview, it is always okay to call and ask ahead of time by asking the person who is your contact at the organization what would be appropriate to wear. No matter what you select, make sure that what you wear is neat, polished, and it fits. So again, no wrinkles, nothing that's too loose or baggy. It should fit your body type in a way so that it appears neat. Subtlety is key as well. You don't want to have any accessories or strong fragrances that are overpowering and kind of overpower your outfit, and even more importantly, what you're saying in the interview. You always want to make sure that people remember you and what you say during your interview, not what you wore. Here are a few examples that outline appropriate interview attire. And here's one more slide with a few more examples. Again, you want to make sure you're erring on the side of being more formal, more conservative, ensuring that all of your clothes fit and look neat, and accessories are subtle. When packing things to bring the day of your interview, you want to make sure that you bring copies of your resume so that you're able to pass them out to those who haven't had the opportunity to view your document yet. Bring a paper and a pen so that you can take notes. You can also feel free to jot some notes down on the paper prior to going on the interview. For example, you might want to make sure that you have notes about what questions you would like to ask the interviewer about the position or the company. You want to keep your resume and your notes and extra pieces of paper in something that looks neat, like a pad folio or a folder that again looks neat and where you can keep everything organized. Lastly, consider making some basic business cards. Vistaprint has a lot of wonderful options and the price is fairly reasonable. It's a good idea to check your online presence before an interview. You can do this by Googling yourself and seeing what information pops up. If any information is rising to the top that might not be putting your best foot forward, it would be in your best interest to delete that content from whatever platform it is on. At the same time, while you are kind of minimizing anything that might be not as professional, you want to maximize your professional imprint across your social media platforms. So whether you're on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, make sure that you're highlighting experiences that you've had that align with your professional goals. You can also highlight awards you've received or any volunteer opportunities that you've recently completed or participated in. You can also take this time to build your virtual network. So potentially reaching out to individuals that either work for the company that you are applying to work for as well and connecting with them to either just reignite a relationship or to establish a new connection. And lastly, you can like, tweet, retweet, share information that is industry related. So when somebody looks at your account, they'll see something that is tied to you and their industry right away. Okay, so we are about 20 slides into this presentation, and now you have arrived at the interview. So we're going to talk about how to deliver a great first impression, and then we're going to move to speaking about asking and answering questions. So make sure that when you arrive for your interview, you greet the receptionist and announce your name and why you're there. Practice a firm and confident handshake. If you are a person who is not interested in giving a handshake at this time, you can bow or simply acknowledge the fact that you don't wish to shake hands for whatever reason that might be. When you're speaking to an individual, whether it be the receptionist or the person who's interviewing you, you want to make sure that you smile and make eye contact with this individual. And additionally, use good posture and make sure that you respect body space. So usually staying within an arm's distance of someone is acceptable. Let's talk about how we can connect the dots for your future employer between their needs and how you can fulfill these needs. A lot of interviewees feel anxious before an interview because they're worried about what they're going to be asked during an interview. If you're one of these people, don't worry, you can calm down. We're going to outline different formats of questions that you'll be asked and different categories of questions that you will be asked during an interview. Typically during an interview, an employer is going to ask you questions about certain areas of your experience and why you're interested in the job. So the first area that an employer could ask you about is anything that's on your resume. So anything on your resume is fair game. They're going to want to do a background check to make sure that you are just as you appear on paper. They want to make sure that you appear the same way in person. They're going to ask you specifics about their company and the job that you're applying for so that they can learn a little bit more about why you are interested in the position. They're going to ask you to give examples about your past experience to, again, confirm what's on your resume and to provide examples of your work and how you work with others. And lastly, they may ask you questions about your future goals within that company and industry. Remember this slide from earlier? It includes core competencies that have been outlined by NACE, the National Association of Colleges and Employers, that were identified by employers to explain what skills they most value in employees. So the top 8 are listed here, beginning with critical thinking and problem solving and ending with global and intercultural or multicultural fluency. If you're worried about what types of questions they might ask you or what skills would be helpful to outline in an interview, this list is a really good place to start. So again, we talked about this before, but when you're preparing to go into an interview, try and have examples ready that outline your ability to demonstrate leadership, utilize technology, be professional, and demonstrate work ethic in a professional environment. So if you can start with this list and think about examples, most likely the questions that you'll be asked in an interview will call on you to give examples of times when you have demonstrated these core competencies. During an interview, an employer could ask you questions about your background, skills, and experience in 4 different ways. And so we've outlined those 4 ways here on this slide. So first of all, an employer could ask you about your career background or your professional history. Examples of these questions could sound like, what could you tell me about yourself? What was your favorite course in college? Why did you decide to be a fill in the blank major? They could also ask you about questions concerning why you want to work for their organization specifically. And it could be phrased as, why do you want to work for our organization? What attracted you to this position? And these are just kind of general background questions that are going to conduct a resume check for the employer and also let them know a little bit more about your knowledge of their company and why you want to work for them and why you think you're a good fit to work at that company specifically. The next 2 types of questions that you'll be asked are behavioral interview questions and situational interview questions. An example of a behavioral question could be, tell me about a time when blank. So tell me about a time when you worked with a team to accomplish a goal. A behavioral interview question is asking you to give an example from your past experience to support your answer to that question. Another type of question format is a situational question. That format could take, or that question could take the form of, what would you do if? What would you do if you had a disagreement with a coworker? What would you do if you were trying to manage a difficult client? These are hypothetical questions. So you would explain how you would work in that situation if presented with the opportunity. Both of these types of questions are allowing the employer to learn more about how you problem solve and critically think. It's also giving them an idea of what it would be like to work with you. So this is that chemistry check type of question that we were talking about way at the beginning of the presentation. So learning how you behave at work is a chemistry check for the employer. Another way that an employer could check to see if you would be a good fit for the team, so a chemistry check, is a viewpoint question. So an example could be, what do you think about the current state of affairs in the country right now? That's a bad example, but it's anything that's asking you for your opinion. So whenever answering these questions, you want to make sure that you give your opinion, be as honest as possible, and make sure that you just support your opinion with your reasoning. The reason why it's important to know different types of formats that interview questions could be asked in is because then you can prepare to have your answer ready to go, but pivot based on the type of question that is being asked. So let's say, for example, the employer wants to learn more about how you work as part of a team. An example of a resume check or a question about your professional history could come out as, how did you collaborate with a team to accomplish XYZ listed here on your resume? The behavioral version of that question could be, tell me about a time when you accomplished a goal as part of a team. The situational version of that question could sound something like, what role do you usually assume in a team? And lastly, a viewpoint question could be, what is the most conducive environment for a team to work in? So again, going back to your preparation, if you have prepared, 1 to 3 examples of a time when you best worked as a team, you could answer all of these questions using one of those examples or all of those examples, obviously a different example for each question. But, if you have an example of a time when you worked with a team in order to finish a project, you could use that exact example for the behavioral question. If they're asking you what role you usually assume in a team, you could use that example to explain and support your reasoning for what role you usually assume in a team for the situational question. And you could also use that experience to support your answer as to your viewpoint of what you think the most conducive environment for a team is. So again, this is why preparation is so important, because the employer is going to ask you about skills, and if you have prepared a few examples for each skill that you feel like you're really good at, and skills that you feel like you can anticipate the employer will ask, you'll be ready to go no matter what way the employer asks you a question. Here's common tricky interview questions that might come up during your interview. The first one is, tell me about yourself. This is tricky because you're pulling from years and years of experience, and you're a very well-rounded, holistic person. And when someone asks you to tell them about you, it's kind of like, well, where do I start? What do I start with? I would recommend preparing an answer for this question, because most likely an interview will open up with this exact question. So take a few minutes and prepare your answer. So what a employer is really wanting to know when they ask you to tell them about you is they really want to know about your background as it relates to the position and why you want to work for that company in that specific role. So instead of imagining that you're answering the tell me about yourself question, imagine that you are answering the question, why do you want to work for us and why are you qualified? The next type of question that's tricky is, why should I hire you? So let's think about the root of what an employer is asking here. They're asking either about a strength, they're trying to figure out a unique strength that you have that sets you apart from other candidates, or they're just trying to figure out why you think that you are most uniquely qualified for the job. So again, go back to your preparation, think about some strengths that you might have listed before you sat down to go on this interview, and pull from that list of strengths to explain to this employer why you are uniquely qualified for this role and therefore why they should hire you. What are you most proud of? This question is difficult because sometimes in an interview, candidates actually have a hard time bragging about themselves. I would coach you to suspend that belief of you don't want to toot your own horn and you don't want to sound pompous in an interview. An interview is the exact place for you to toot your own horn and not sound pompous, but be confident and proud of the work that you've accomplished in the past, because that information is very valuable to the employer that you're speaking to now. So you want to make sure that you are highlighting aspects of your background that you're most proud of, that are the most impressive, because that's going to give the interviewer the exact type of information they need to make their decision. So again, preparing for the interview, thinking about your past experiences and what you are most proud of, and making sure that you have an example to support why you're so proud of this particular experience or accomplishment. Lastly, another difficult question could be, when have you failed? So this question is difficult because you want to be a little bit strategic with your answer. You don't want to give up an answer where you failed so bad that you couldn't recover from it. Although most experiences that could be categorized as failures, something is learned, and there are very few things in life you can't fix. So I'm sure that you've been able to rebound from failures in the past, but you want to think about a time when you failed where you have learned something that would be particularly valuable for this role that you are applying for. So you want to explain the situation around your failure and then what you learned from this situation and how you plan to use that knowledge moving forward so you don't make that mistake again. Talking about interviewing and answering interview questions, I've been giving you strategies that include providing an example from your past experience to answer the question that you're being asked. I would like to share with you an interviewing answer strategy called the STAR strategy to help you formulate answers to questions that require you to give an example. So I always say, remember when you are in an interview that you are a STAR, and this acronym stands for Situation, Task, Action, Result. So whenever you're asked a behavioral question or a question that you would like to give an example from your past experience to use to support your answer, you want to explain the situation in which the story that you're about to tell took place. So this means the who, the what, the where, the when. This will give this employer some context to put your story in. Because remember, you've only been around this person for a couple of minutes at this point, so you're going to have to give them kind of a baseline to start off as you build your answer to this question. So starting with the situation is key. Next, you want to explain the task. So what did you have to complete, or what problem or challenge did you have to solve in that situation? After outlining the task, you will move on to explain your actions. So this is the place in the interview where you can brag about yourself, you can list your accomplishments and your strengths, and you can explain the actions that you took in order to accomplish the task or solve the problem or overcome a challenge. Lastly, you want to wrap up this story with a nice big bow and list the results of your work. So explaining, because you were in this situation, you were assigned this task, or you ran into this problem, you took these action steps and demonstrated your skills and strengths. What were the results of your work? So what happened in the end? Why is the STAR strategy helpful? As I mentioned previously, it gives you a nice structure to answer questions that require you to provide an example. It allows you to, again, develop a structure or a flow to the strength-based story that you are about to tell your interviewer. It keeps you on track when you're on the spot. So that means that it can prevent you from rambling, but also make sure that you are providing the interviewer with enough information to understand the whole picture and exactly why your strengths and achievements are so impressive. And I know that right now it kind of sounds like a lot to wrap your head around and to think, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to remember STAR, situation, task, action, result, when I'm on the spot in an interview? I promise you, the more you practice telling stories this way, the easier it will become. So again, that's why preparing for an interview is so important, because practice using tools like Big Interview or scheduling a mock interview with a career counselor or just speaking about yourself in front of a mirror is helpful just to get practice with having those stories come out in the most informative and eloquent way possible. An example of what using the STAR strategy during an interview could sound like. If the interviewer asks you a question like, tell me about a time when you had to lead a team in completing a project, the STAR strategy could sound a little something like this. So the situation and the task could be, as a senior career counselor at Widener University, I was asked to create an assignment as part of a junior nursing course that would require 150 students to write a resume and cover letter and have both documents reviewed by a counselor prior to submission. The actions that I took in order to complete that task could sound like, in order to review 150 resumes and 150 cover letters, I utilized my team of 5 career counselors to present resume and cover letter clinics, which allowed these students to compose both documents in real time while having a counselor on hand to answer their questions. After the clinics, then, I utilized a Sign Up Genius to schedule my team to conduct 2 days of resume and cover letter reviews. Prior to working with the nursing students, I taught my team how to compose a nursing resume and a nursing cover letter during a team meeting and remained available for questions leading up to both clinic presentations. So the results of my work? My team was able to successfully educate this large group of students while also providing each student with one-on-one attention. Because the resumes and cover letters that were created as part of this course were so strong, when these juniors became seniors and started to look for full-time employment, I was able to focus on fine-tuning resume content as opposed to beginning the education process at that moment. So again, when you're delivering this answer, it might not sound as scripted. I was clearly reading from the slide, but it just gives you an idea of how to outline the situation and the task to provide the employer or the interviewer with a context to put your story in. It explains the actions that you took. So this is where you can outline strengths and explain how you have experienced working with a team. And then the last part is the results. So this is, again, where you're kind of bragging about yourself. So in this situation, I explained that we successfully educated this large group of students. And then I also mentioned that the product that was produced was so strong that it helped me in the future. So that just is another way to further prove the results of my work, and that I was able to successfully lead our team in creating quality resumes and cover letters for these students. We've been talking a lot about ways to prepare and things you should do during an interview. I just want to take a couple of minutes to explain things that you should not do during an interview. Do not arrive late. That's why planning logistics beforehand are so important. So again, make sure that you understand traffic patterns, exactly where you're going, who you're meeting with. It's a very bad look to arrive late to an interview, so make sure you prepare beforehand. Don't ever look at your phone during an interview. Actually, it's probably best to leave your phone somewhere else. And if you have to bring it with you for some reason, then make sure it is either turned off or completely on silent. When answering interview questions, don't lie or exaggerate. Honesty is always the best policy, and you just want to make sure that you are representing your most authentic and true self in an interview. Obviously, don't curse, don't chew gum or have anything in your mouth like a mint or anything like that, because it is very distracting and sometimes it could be extremely annoying to someone who's talking to you. Don't ramble or provide extremely long answers. Again, the STAR strategy can help you with that. Don't speak negatively about an employer or a professor. that usually won't work out well for you because no one has been in your situation. So even if you were working for the most horrible manager, it's impossible to explain that to a stranger without them thinking that you wouldn't speak the same way about them if you were unhappy about something. So avoid negative talk during an interview. Lastly, don't bring up salary or benefits during the interview. This is to be saved for after the offer has been made. At the end of the interview, once the employer has asked you all of the questions that they have, most likely they'll turn to you and say, "Do you have any questions for us or for me?" At this moment, the wrong answer, the only wrong question or the only wrong statement that you can say is, "No, I'm good." You want to make sure that you prepare at least 5 to 7 or 8 questions for your potential employer. These questions can give you a wonderful opportunity to highlight a strength that maybe you feel like you didn't talk about enough during an interview. And they can also get your questions answered during the interview so that you can learn more about the company and the position to make sure that it's a good fit for you. So you want to make sure that the questions you ask show you've done your basic research, so you've taken the time to research their company, and you want to ask thoughtful questions about the organization, the job you're applying for, their plans for the future, the team you'll be working on. You want to make sure, again, that you are asking questions that can focus on or highlight even further ways that you could contribute to the institution. So, for example, if you have made it all the way through this interview and for some reason they haven't asked you about your ability to work on a team, and you know that teamwork is a really important part of this job, you could ask them a question that sounds something like, "Could you give me an example of how your nurses work on this floor together?" The interviewer will provide you with an example, and then you can say, "Oh, that's so interesting. Thank you so much for sharing. In my past experience, I have," and then you could outline a strength that you have in teamwork. It is okay to write down your questions prior. That's why it's helpful to bring, a pad of paper, a pen, and put them in a Padfolio or a folder. You can you can make sure that you look at your notes before you ask your question by just saying to the interviewer, "Oh, yes, I did prepare a few questions. Do you mind if I just glance at my notes?" This is not going to reflect poorly on you in any way. If anything, it shows preparation, that you took the time to really think about questions that you have about this opportunity that you are hopefully about to receive. In addition to a few of the examples I gave in the previous slide, here are some more sample questions that you could ask at the end of an interview. I won't read all of them out loud, I'll just pick a couple, but how will the effectiveness of my work be evaluated in this role? Could you tell me about the last team event you did together? Are there structured or informal opportunities to learn about other departments? I read about XYZ program on your website. Can you tell me more about it and how it might connect with this role? So again, these are just examples of questions that show that you've done your research, that show that you're trying to make sure that this job and this company are a good fit for you and your life, and that give you an opportunity to highlight skills and strengths that you feel like you would like to just reinforce at the end of the interview. It's always important to close an interview on a high note and to follow up afterward. So, how can you accomplish this? At the end of an interview, most likely someone will indicate to you that the interview is over by saying, "The interview is over for today. Is there anything you would like to say before you leave?" Or they might just say, "Thank you for your time. We'll be in touch." At this moment, you would want to take this opportunity to emphasize your interest, providing that you are interested in the role, by saying something to the extent of, "Thank you so much for your time. I really, really enjoyed getting to know more about your organization and the role that I'm applying for. I would really value the opportunity to be a part of the team. I could see this fitting into my life really well." So then they know that if an offer is extended, again, barring negotiation, you're most likely to accept. You want to make sure that you ask the interviewer about the timeline or next steps in the process. So then you have an idea of when it is appropriate to follow up. So always asking either in the question section or right before you leave, what is the next step in the process? When can I expect to hear back from you? While you are kind of waiting to hear back, it is always a really wonderful idea to send a thank you email or note, but an email is totally fine within 48 hours of the conclusion of your interview to everyone who you met with. So collecting business cards along the way is helpful, so you'll know you'll have everyone's contact information, and composing a really nice and unique individualized thank you note or email puts a nice touch, and it helps, it will allow the interviewer to think about you, the day after the interview or 2 days after the interview, after, maybe they have met with other candidates. So sending the thank you note can make sure that you stay in the front of their mind. Before you leave, you want to close, make sure you smile, give a firm handshake if handshakes are things that we are still doing. If not, a bow or a nod is totally appropriate. But these are just a few examples of ways that you can powerfully close an interview and then follow up afterwards. Before I wrap up this presentation, I just wanted to take a moment to go over how to conduct an effective phone and video interview. Phone interviews can be a little bit tricky because you are at a slight disadvantage since you're unable to see the reaction of the listener when you provide an answer for an interview question. But don't worry about that. Here are a few tips to help you nail your phone interview. First of all, make sure that when you are conducting the phone interview, you're in a quiet environment with no distractions. If you happen to be doing this in your home, make sure you're making those that you live with aware that you need complete silence for, the next 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how long the interview is. But you just want to make sure that you're in an environment where nothing will be in your way or distracting to you or the person on the other line. If possible, you would want to talk on a landline for this conversation, just because cell phone service can be spotty at times and you wouldn't want your service to drop in the middle of a very important call like this. Before the interview, gather your interviewer's contact information, which is phone name, number, and email address. This way you have someone to get in touch with should things not be going according to plan during the phone interview or before the phone interview. Make sure that when you are speaking and delivering your answers, you project interest in your tone. This can be accomplished by smiling while you're talking, or even sometimes I've heard the tip where if you can just speak into a mirror by looking at your own reflection, your brain thinks that you're speaking to another person, and naturally you just change the tone of your voice when you're talking to another person. Be pleasant, upbeat. Again, speak into a mirror, that can help. Have your resume, cover letter, and any research or notes handy for you to look at really quickly during the interview. You don't want to read off of anything, but you might want to have these items handy just to, again, glance at quickly to jog your memory and make sure that you are on track with your answers. Have a pen, a paper, and a calendar ready so that you can, at the end of the interview, ask for next steps and make sure that you have documented, their timeline so you know when to follow up. And you never know, at the end of the phone interview, they might say right away, oh, we would like to schedule an in-person interview with you. When are you available? So it's good to have your calendar handy so you don't have to go searching for that and delay the process of scheduling for the interviewer on the other side. Here are a few tips to help you nail a video interview. Video interviews take place in two different formats. So one, it could be in the form of a video call. So instead of a phone call, it's a video call. There's a person on the other end that you're interacting with, and they're asking you questions and you're answering the questions. There's also an option that employers are using sometimes as a video recorded interview. So in this scenario, there's no one on the other line. You're just provided with a list of questions and you have to record your answer to these questions. So in the first situation where you're on a video call, you want to make sure that you have a pen, paper, and a calendar ready, and you want to make sure at the end you ask for next steps. If you are participating in a video interview where you're recording your answers, make sure that you know that your video is completely turned off before you kind of get out of that question answering mode. In both scenarios, you want to make sure that your background is not distracting, and you want to make sure that the device that you're using is stable. So don't conduct a video interview holding your device in your hand. You want to make sure the device is placed on something that's stationary. This can help because then the person watching the video isn't getting seasick from all of the camera movement. A non-distracting background could consist of a blank wall, or just something that doesn't have too much going on behind it, so the interviewer can focus on you and what you're saying as opposed to pictures in the background. If possible, you want to practice answering questions using a recorded format or answering questions via video. And you can do this by just making sure that your camera is set up, that it's at an angle that you like, and you can just practice kind of talking into the camera and making sure that you're making eye contact before you get to the interview. Dress professionally. I know some people say if it's a video interview, you just dress professionally from on the top half of your outfit, but I would recommend just wearing an interview outfit the entire wardrobe. It just puts you in the right mindset. It gets you kind of thinking in that professional way, and it just kind of makes sure that you're suited up for this opportunity. Same as the phone interview, you want to make sure that you are in an environment that is free of distractions, it is quiet, and make sure that you do have your resume, cover letter, and any notes handy. Again, remember not to read off of your notes, but just have something there that you can quickly look down at for reference if needed. If you've watched this entire presentation and you feel like you would like to schedule a one-on-one appointment with a counselor to talk about interviewing strategies or to conduct a mock interview, you can feel free to schedule an appointment by emailing careers@widener.edu or calling us at our main number. I would recommend sending an email over a phone call because we will most likely get in touch with you a little bit quicker via email and phone. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope that you enjoyed learning a little bit how to prepare for and execute an interview, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day.